That night in Boston, snow melted into drizzle, and the neon of St. Gabriel Medical Center washed the sidewalks in a pale, antiseptic green. I, Dr. Jonah R. Hale, transplant surgeon, sat in the on-call room with a window over Tremont Street. The wall clock crept past 1:12 a.m. The UNOS hotline buzzed. Heart available. Male, 29, sudden cardiac arrest after an MVC in Vermont. High HLA compatibility. ETA Boston 240. Clipped. Clinical. Like every OPO, Organ Procurement Organization, bulletin. I called back and confirmed a heart team within 10 minutes. Our recipient, Amelia Brooks, 27, end-stage dilated cardiomyopathy. We'd kept her alive on dobutamine and veno-arterial ECMO for 14 days. Every beep on her monitor felt like the click of a countdown. 203, immunohematology called. Dr. Hale, the donor's blood sample doesn't match. ABO typing won't resolve. What do you mean, won't resolve? I asked. It's not A, not B, not AB, not O. RH is indeterminate. Every agglutination panel with antisera is silent, said Priya Nayar, head of the lab, measured and slow, as if there's nothing to bind. Labeling error, I said. Wrong donor, barcode swap. We reran it. Gel card, tube, flow, same result. The RBC surface antigen profile looks odd. Under light microscopy, the membrane is slightly distorted, rim a bit thick, center clearer than normal. I can't name it. Out the window, an ambulance turned in, rain flashing white. On a cold gurney, the stainless transport box gleamed like a blade. What about lymphocyte cross-match with the recipient's serum, I asked. Priya drew a breath. Negative. No cytotoxic reaction. No complement activation. In theory, no hyperacute rejection. Then we go, I said. And I knew, right there, a door swung open on desperation. OR 17. 2:51 a.m. The donor heart lay in a bowl of ice, twitching softly after a custodial perfusion. A film of frost fogged the bath. Blood in the tubing wasn't the usual rich Venus maroon. It was darker, nearer to old wine. Nora, our anesthetist, flicked her eyes at me. PA pressure 22, sat 96. Her voice had a tremor. We opened Amelia's chest. Clamped, cut. The diseased heart was boggy, heavy with fluid, dilated. When the new heart was sewn in, clamp off, something's blood filled the coronaries. I waited, fingertips on the RV. It kicked once. No V-fib, no shocks. A firm first beat, then a second, a third. Sinus. Beautiful, Nora breathed. But the monitor printed something strange. After every T wave, a faint sawtooth that wasn't a U and wasn't noise. I pretended not to see it. Heparin. Protamine. Every number obeyed. The transplant ran as if it had been written already. CivicU. Post-op day 0. Amelia opened her eyes at 9:20. She tried to speak around the ETT. I took her hand. Your heart's strong, I said. She nodded, tears bright. Priya stood in the doorway, hugging a clipboard, gaze fixed on a syringe of blood the nurse had just drawn. Dr. Hale, I'll need another sample, she said. Take it. At noon, Priya returned. Amelia's smear. Erythrocytes are slightly elongated. Surface to volume ratio has shifted. Oxygen saturation is higher than expected at the same partial pressure. HLA chimerism, 2 cell populations, Amelia's and unclassified. ABO for her plasma now, unclassified. In the context of a heart transplant, that happens, I asked, already knowing. Not in any text, Priya said, but it's gentle. No attack, no hemolysis. As though it doesn't need to bind. I drummed my fingers on the bed rail. Keep this within the team until we know. She nodded, but in her eyes, I caught a flicker of something too close to hunger. Post-op day 1. Amelia was extubated. Her mother, Linda Brooks, brought a blue cloth journal. She's kept one since 13, Linda said. She always carries it. Amelia studied it like an old friend. She opened to the page before surgery, shaky lines. If there is a miracle, I'll hear it in my chest. She laughed a breath. By afternoon, she was writing. The pen moved fast and even. I watched from the hall, not wanting to intrude. When she handed the journal to her mom, I saw Mom's face pinch. "What are you writing, Amelia?" Linda's voice was small. It wasn't English on the page, not Latin script, not anything I recognized. Veined curves like vessels, broken into small cells like honeycomb, woven into lines like warp and weft. Some symbols repeated, but not like human language repeats. "I'm just rewriting," Amelia said, genuinely puzzled. "The same thing, but truer." "Truer to what?" I asked. She touched her chest. "To the rhythm."
Late, Priya emailed. The donor RBCs aren't merely no ABO. They show a linkage pattern in no known blood group. Kell, Duffy, Kidd, MNS, all negative. Membrane proteins, on mass spec, produce an unfamiliar spectrum, peaks not in any library. I rechecked. The readout looks more like a language than a protein profile. I know how that sounds. I replied, "We'll talk tomorrow." I didn't add that language made my skin go cold. It matched what Amelia had just done. That night, I dreamed the OR dimmed until the surgical light pinched into a single pupil. Coronary lines on the new heart spelled around me, weaving into curling lines. I touched them, and the smell of blood slipped into wet metal. I woke before dawn. I'd written on the inside of my wrist with a Sharpie. Small curves, hexagon cells. I didn't remember doing it. Post-op day 2. Amelia started to read what she wrote, not aloud, in the evenness of her breathing. The monitor recorded a ripple after each QRS. No pain, no dyspnea. But her plasma carried tiny grains, neither lipid nor fibrin, that under the microscope looked like minute glyphs, dissolving at 38 degrees Celsius. Priya set up Clahe to lift contrast on her smear images. Those long RBCs lined up in ranks along a single axis when exposed to a mild magnetic field. "They can hear," Priya half-joked. I didn't laugh. The OPO called back. "There's an irregularity in the donor file. Next of kin won't authorize disclosure. All requests go through legal." In UNOS, the donor ID for this case was a hole. Click, and the page blanked. I almost typed an email to Richie. No, that name belonged to another story. Here it was, Jake Lavoie, coordinator at New England Donor Services. Jake didn't answer. By late afternoon, Claire, Amelia's nurse, came to my office pale. "Dr. Hale, you should see this." On the ICU wall, where condensation fogged the paint, were finger-traced marks no one had accidentally smeared. They had beat, honeycomb rings, vein curves, tiny cells. Amelia slept. Her hands were clean. No one had entered the room for 15 minutes. "They made themselves," Claire whispered. I wiped them away. 10 minutes later, they returned. Post-op day 3. Psychiatry came. "Steroids, ICU psychosis," they said. I nodded and gave them Amelia's journal. They turned pages. The old entries, very human. First day of high school,
a fight with her mom, a first kiss in the park, had been rewritten in the new script. The structure remained, long and short paragraphs, emphases, blanks where a sigh would be. But the characters didn't belong to any alphabet. A young doctor ventured, maybe she's copying as meditation. But why all the memories must be rewritten, I asked. No one answered. Priya texted, "Can you come to the lab?" Under TEM, she pointed. Look at the erythrocyte center. Humans have no nuclei, but here, the clear central zone holds nanocolumns in a hexagonal lattice, not a living structure. It's like a compositor's tray. A tray for letters, I said. She flinched at herself, then nodded. It sounds mad, but the arrangement looks like metamaterial design, more than biology. It modulates how light passes, maybe also how signals pass. Like an antenna? Like a circuit. That night, I sat with Amelia. Her eyes were bright, in a way that wasn't fever. "Do you hear it?" she asked. "Hear what?" "The beat," she whispered. "It doesn't just pump, it counts, it calls." "Calls who?" She tapped the journal. "These aren't for eyes, they're for blood." "Blood reads?" I laughed and didn't mean it. "Blood reads what?" She tilted her head, voice falling until I had to lean in. "The donor." Morning. Post-op day 4, the ICU hallway. CCTV went snowy, spliced with frozen frames. A single eye on white, rimmed in honeycomb. IT blamed ECMO pump interference. Amelia had been off ECMO since day 0. The hospital CEO called a closed meeting. Legal, PR, ethics. Nobody said extraterrestrial, but the word thickened the air like local anesthetic. I recommended an information freeze and watchful waiting. Someone recited HIPAA and patient privacy. Nods around the table. The meeting broke at 11:11, a number that bothered me for no medical reason. At noon, Jake Lavoie finally called. "You didn't hear this from me, Jonah, but the Vermont procurement had an incident." The team reported an exceptionally beautiful heart. The accompanying blood wouldn't measure. OR video shows a 7-minute gap. I'm not assigning blame. I'm saying no one there
wants to talk. "The donor's name?" I asked. "No disclosure consent," he hesitated. "We're calling him ND0. Non-donor 0, I tried to joke. Jake didn't. Post-op day 5. Amelia spiked to 100.8, not an antibiotic fever. All cultures negative, CRP barely up, WBC flat. Fever like a signal. She wrote faster, each page woven. Sweat on her brow fell to the paper. The ink bloomed into concentric rings and then set into characters. "Amelia," I said, "what if you stop writing?" She tried. The monitor stuttered and rippled. She resumed. Rhythm settled. She looked at me, afraid. "I have to," she whispered. "For who?" "For him," she said, hand over her heart. "Who is he?" She looked through me. "The donor, but not." She laughed in pain. "I don't have words." That night, Priya emailed 2 composites. One of Amelia's ECG, one of her pages. She'd drawn lines between the post-T-saw teeth and a recurring symbol. "They correspond," she wrote, as code and decode. "You're saying the heart is the transmitter and the journal the receiver?" I called her. "Or the reverse," she said, "or both." "Jonah, I'm leaning toward a hypothesis of no donor. Whatever donor means here isn't in our organism catalog. It's using blood as its programming medium." What do you want me to do? Don't laugh, Priya said. Don't read. Don't let anyone read those marks as writing. Don't let them into eyes. I said nothing. Priya's breath quickened. Blood sees better than eyes. Post-op day 6. Linda asked me to take the journal home. She feared her daughter would collapse. I drove along the Charles under a sky that broke open with sun as if it had never rained. On the radio, a local outage had taken out traffic lights in South Boston at precisely 3:17. I checked my watch. 3:17. Coincidence or not? I set the journal on my kitchen table and called Priya. No answer. I set my palm on the blue cloth. Heat moved between us. It felt like touching a breathing animal. I pulled back, and in my chest a beat slipped sideways as if someone had tapped an imaginary pacer. I opened to the first page. Curves, hexagons, parallel filaments. Suddenly they flowed, no longer still. Not for my eyes, but for my blood. I understood. Not the way you understand the word door, but the way your body understands a motion it knows by doing. Set, turn, loop, pull. I heard my own mouth whisper sounds that belonged to no family of tongues. My heart beat with the written rhythm. A weird yellowed light seemed to
Lean over the kitchen. My phone rang. Nora. I answered. Jonah, the ICU. Amelia is gone. Nora's voice cracked. Bed alarm tripped. She left. No one saw. I slammed the book closed. My pulse spiked and settled. I ran. The ICU was noise and bodies, security moving, nurses shaking. Linda folded in on herself. Where is my daughter? She tore the air. Miss reported the 5th floor fire door opening at 3:17. The camera feed... static. One frame remained, the shadow of a patient in a hospital gown, carrying something like a book, no face. I remembered that the journal was in my house. Someone had rewritten. In Amelia's room, the walls were covered in marks not made by hands. The smell was dark metal, not salt, dense and clean. Priya stood frozen, eyes locked to a blood smear on a slide. Jonah, she whispered. Her blood now is non-human, not self or non-self. It is call. Calling what? I asked. She didn't blink. The donor, or the thing that borrowed the name donor. That night I sat alone in OR 17, lights out. The hall strip fell under the door like thread. I thought of Amelia's old heart. We'd sent it to pathology. I called the pathologist. I need to see the specimen. Engrossing, the formalin was the color of milky tea. The diseased wedge floated, but one small bit, from the apex, was still contracting, slow, regular, against histology. I stepped back. The pathologist muttered a small profanity. Electrical noise, he said, not sounding convinced. I placed my palm on the jar. A beat climbed into my hand. Under the bench scope, little cells clustered on the tissue like row, not precipitate. They were arranging. Burn it, I said. Burn all of it, he stared. We don't... I poured the jar into a steel pan and torched it. Formalin burped, smoke, thick. The tissue jerked once more and lay still. The little cells shattered like spun sugar. The metal smell folded into plastic. I gagged. Jonah, Priya said behind me. I didn't hear her enter. This isn't a thing to burn. Her voice sounded like someone else speaking through her. It's a habit. If you burn it, it moves. Moves where? She looked through me. Into us. Day 7 without Amelia. Boston behaved as if she'd never existed, but the beat remained. The hospital's power grid hiccuped by 1 millisecond at 3:17 every night. 3 other patients' ECGs sprouted an extra tooth after the T-wave. A nurse wrote little marks on her palm without noticing and cried when she did. No news outlet knew. The family released, "Please leave us in peace." But in Trinity Church, I saw someone in a patient gown drift past a column like shadow. I chased in time to catch the corner of a gown entering a mirror. On the glass, Breath wrote half a character and vanished. That night, Nora texted a photo. The glass of OR-17 fogged, letters written backward from the inside. No donor. Underneath, ND0. I remembered my strangled joke to Jake. No one was laughing with me. Back in my kitchen, I opened the drawer. The blue journal lay there, heavier than it should be. I spread it and stared until my eyes hurt. Then I stopped using my eyes. I used rhythm. And I understood enough, just enough to be afraid. What was written didn't tell a story the way humans tell. It encoded repetition, the signals required to place a thing, not an object, a function, into living blood. It didn't send content, it sent method, how to synchronize any receiving blood with a source blood that was non-human, how to erase the idea of a donor and replace it with a source. Source doesn't give. Source calls. Humans don't receive. Humans become. I closed the book. It wasn't too late to run. Not too late to throw it into the river. But in my chest at 3:17, a different beat tapped once. Not mine. I thought of Amelia, her bright eyes. Where had she gone? What had she become? What did that blood want besides rhythm? My phone buzzed. Unknown. I answered, breathing. Then a whisper that didn't pass a larynx. No donor. After that, a string of non-human phonemes, exactly the way a heart reads, poured into my ear, down my throat, into my chest. I slid to the floor, back against the cabinet, and listened until my mouth wrote them back in breath. Over the next week, Boston flickered without dreaming. Streetlights cycled in patterns. Cameras caught still frames of a single eye in the snow. Priya took sudden leave. She sent one line. Jonah, don't read. If you read, don't transmit. She didn't pick up. Nora couldn't sleep. When I close my eyes, she said, I see hex grids stacked like honeycomb flooring. Each cell a glyph, and each glyph a door. If I press one, something will open its eyes at me. I gave her a sedative. I doubted it worked on what was not human. One evening at Copley Square, a billboard went black between ads and showed a single line. Open your eyes. Or don't. I laughed, the sound too hard, like enamel cracking. Passers-by didn't look up. A small package with no sender arrived. Inside, a microtube of blood labeled ND0. A note. Analyze O2 indices. Protein spectra. No disclosure. The handwriting looked like Jake's, but I couldn't swear to it. Down in the lab, Priya gone. Another tech's hand shook. Dr. Hale, I can't. I will, I said. One drop on a slide. Under the scope, it wasn't human blood. The erythrocytes weren't biconcave discs. They were perfect hexagons, tessellating like tiles. When I nudged the slide, they rotated together by a tiny angle, as if obeying a command. I added a drop of my own blood at the edge. They did not mix. A knife-edge boundary formed, and from it tiny glyphs sprouted and arranged in rows. I yanked the slide into formalin. No effect. I poured bleach. No change. I burned it. No flame.
I thought of blood not carrying oxygen but carrying notation, of organs not to live but to translate. I sent nothing to anyone. A month flipped by as if someone had erased the even-numbered days. News never said Amelia's name. The hospital never spoke. But people inside began to write. Not all could read, but all could beat. I traded shifts, slept in a windowless room, taped the glass, wore sunglasses indoors. Ridiculous, but I kept breathing. One afternoon, Amelia's mother came. She didn't cry. She set a white thread on my desk. "A Father Mateo at a church in New York gave me this," she said, tired. "He told me to tie it loosely, to remember not to tie." I smiled without humor. "I understand." She studied my face as if trying to memorize it before it changed. "You will find my daughter, won't you?" I nodded. I lied to her and to myself. That night, I looped the thread over my doorknob. It slipped from my hand after 3 steps. I did not pick it up. On a bright day that felt like rain, I saw Amelia. I don't know why I knew, I just did. She stood across the street, gown stirring as if air held it up. People moved through her as if through a gap. She looked at me, not with eyes, with rhythm. I took a step. A truck screamed. I stopped. When I looked back, she was gone. On a shop window, Breath wrote half a character and cleared. I did not run after. That night, I opened the blue journal one last time. I didn't read. I wrote in human words. "Amelia, if you can still hear, stop writing. Keep your rhythm." I put the book in the oven. I did not turn it. I closed the door, as if closing a mouth. I sat on the stoop and listened to Boston breathe. Wet brick, clean metal. I dozed. In the dark behind my eyelids, a line of writing walked by. It waited. I didn't open. If this story has a resolution, it lives here, not in explanation, but in habit. I don't repeat. I don't let my gaze linger on the shimmering glass. I don't guess at letters in wood grain. I count. 4 in, 4 out. Keep the between empty of names. It's enough to get through the night. Sometimes 317 taps my sternum like knuckles at a door. Sometimes an OR-17, a sweat trail on glass, arrays into hexagons and undoes itself when I turn away. Sometimes in dreams with no faces, I hear blood, not human, whisper, no donor. I answer without a mouth, no reader. I don't know where Amelia is. I pretend she's free. Or I know that free in that other language is a rhythm that doesn't need a person. Even so, when I cross Copley, I reflexively avoid the billboards, lest I read an invitation. If one night, anywhere in America with glass and light like Boston's, you see a black screen with a white line, open your eyes, or don't. Please don't. Tie a white thread, let it hang loose. Stand in the between of 2 breaths. Remember, blood may read better than eyes, and rhythm is the oldest road a thing can take, because some things once grafted to human life, not by gene or virus, but by notation, never need a donor again. They only need the right beat and a look that doesn't withdraw in time. Don't give it that look. If you already have, don't transmit. If you've already transmitted, don't read further.
Let human blood with a person, go quiet, like a song you never quite learned. And if one day you find yourself rewriting your journal in a non-human script, do the last thing that's still yours to choose. Close your eyes. Keep your rhythm. Leave everything with no donor on the far side of the call. Somewhere, I believe, Boston will remember your name in human words for a little while longer. Under Boston's damp glass, unfamiliar heartbeats still whisper. Open your eyes, or don't. If you crave stories that slip from the operating room into the midnight street, from a drop of blood into code, and from the screen into your sleep, stay with us. Subscribe to Dark Whispers for a new hush each week, medical mysteries, non-human signals, doors that open only when you don't look. Subscribe, ring the bell, and tell us in the comments whether you kept your own rhythm. And remember to tie a white thread across the threshold. Never give it the final iteration.